Subscribe to Cheating Tales Lab. Now let's begin. The autumn rain hammered against Thomas Chang's windshield as his phone erupted with a call from Emma's school. His daughter's teacher, Susie Murray, spoke with a tremor he'd never heard before. "Mr. Chang, you need to come to the school right now. Don't stop for anything. Don't call anyone. Just come." Thomas felt ice crawl down his spine. 7 years in military intelligence had taught him to recognize genuine fear. He made the 20-minute drive in 12, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The parking lot made his blood freeze. 3 black FBI vans, 2 police cruisers, and a perimeter of yellow tape. A thin man in a gray suit intercepted him at the entrance. "Mr. Chang, I'm Special Agent Philip Harris. We need to talk about your daughter." "Where is she?" "Is she hurt?" "She's fine physically. She's with the school counselor." Harris's jaw tightened. "Mr. Chang, who dressed your daughter this morning?" "My ex-wife's mother, Maddie Howard." Dinah had an early meeting, so Maddie took Emma to school. Thomas's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. "What's happened?" Harris led him to a conference room where the school director sat trembling. "We found something sewn into Emma's jacket lining," she said quietly. "During recess, she caught her sleeve on the fence. The lining tore and something fell out. Mrs. Murray saw it and called us immediately." Agent Harris opened a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a small USB drive wrapped in waterproof material, professionally sealed. But what made Thomas's legs buckle was the tiny label adhered to it, a red triangle symbol he'd seen only twice before, both times in classified briefings about organized crime networks. "Mr. Chang, I need you to be very honest with me," Harris said. "Do you have any idea why a data storage device marked with a trafficking syndicate's identifier would be hidden in your 7-year-old daughter's clothing?" The room spun. Thomas gripped the table edge, forcing his training to override his panic. "I've never seen that before. I don't know how it got there." "Your mother-in-law dressed Emma this morning?" "Yes. Maddie's been helping with Emma more often since she started dating some new guy a few months ago. Said he's made her feel young again." The words tasted like ash. "I need to see my daughter." "In a moment. First, you need to understand the situation." Harris pulled out a tablet showing surveillance footage. "This USB contains encrypted files we're still working to access, but the symbol matches an organization we've been tracking for 2 years, a trafficking network moving through the Midwest. This is the first physical evidence we've recovered." Thomas's mind shifted into analysis mode, the same state he'd entered during intelligence operations. If this is evidence, why hide it in a child's jacket? Either someone's trying to move it without detection or someone's setting you up, Harris finished, "which is why you're here talking to me instead of in cuffs. The placement is amateurish. Too obvious once discovered. Professionals would never risk using a child this way unless they wanted the device found. You think someone's framing me?" It wasn't a question. "I think someone either doesn't know what they're doing or they want us looking at you instead of them." Harris leaned forward. "I've read your file, Mr. Chang. Military intelligence, decorated service, now doing data forensics consulting. You'd know better than to use your own daughter as a courier." "Maddie's boyfriend," Thomas said, the pieces clicking into place. "She's been different since she met him. Secretive. She canceled our usual Sunday dinners twice last month. Said she was helping him with business matters." "What's his name?" "She's never introduced us." Dina asked, but Maddie got defensive, said we'd meet him when she was ready. Thomas pulled out his phone. "I can call Dina. We've already contacted your ex-wife. She's on her way." Harris paused. "Mr. Chang, I'm going to be straight with you. You're not under arrest, but you can't leave the city. We'll be watching. If you're involved in this, we'll know. And if I'm not? Then someone just made your daughter an accessory to a federal crime. I'd be very interested in knowing who and why." They let Thomas see Emma in the counselor's office. She ran to him, and he caught her in a fierce embrace, memorizing the feel of her small body against his chest. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and playground dirt. "Daddy, I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "Mrs. Murray said I didn't." "I know, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." He pulled back to look at her face, saw the confusion and fear there. "Did Grandma Maddie say anything about your jacket this morning?" "She said it was special, that it would keep me safe." Emma's lower lip trembled. Is Grandma in trouble? Thomas chose his words carefully. I don't know yet, but I promise I'll figure it out. Dina Howard arrived 30 minutes later, her usual composure shattered. She'd been crying. Thomas, what the hell is happening? The FBI called me at work, said something about Emma and trafficking. Not here, Thomas said quietly, nodding toward Emma. They spoke in hushed tones in the hallway, while Emma colored with the counselor. Dina's hands shook as she gripped her purse. My mother wouldn't, she'd never. When's the last time you actually met this boyfriend of hers? I haven't. She keeps making excuses. Dina's eyes widened with realization. Oh God, Thomas, you don't think... I think we need to find out who he is and what he's gotten Maddie involved in. Agent Harris emerged from another room, his expression grim. Mrs. Howard, we need to speak with your mother immediately. Where can we find her? She should be at home. She lives in the duplex on Oakmont Street. Dina's voice cracked. Please tell me she's not really involved in something like this. That's what we intend to find out. Thomas followed the FBI convoy to Maddie Howard's duplex, his mind cataloging every detail. Dina rode with him, silent except for occasional sobs she tried to muffle. Emma was with a friend's family, safely away from whatever was about to unfold. Maddie's car sat in the driveway, but the house had an abandoned quality. Harris and two other agents approached the door, while Thomas and Dina waited by his car. The knock went unanswered. After announcing themselves twice, Harris nodded to his team. They breached the door. The scene inside made Thomas's stomach clench. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, paper scattered everywhere. Someone had searched the place thoroughly and recently. In the kitchen, they found Maddie Howard sitting at the table, her face pale and streaked with tears. In front of her lay a burner phone and a note written in her shaky handwriting. I'm sorry. Mrs. Howard, I'm Special Agent Harris. We need to talk about the item found in your granddaughter's jacket. Maddie looked up, saw Dina and Thomas in the doorway, and broke down completely. I didn't know. He said it was just business documents. He said if I didn't help him, he'd hurt Emma. He showed me pictures of her at school, at the playground. He knew everything. Dina rushed to her mother. Mom, who? Who threatened you? Brett Sellers, the man I've been seeing. Maddie's hands shook violently. He was so kind at first. We met at the community center 3 months ago. He took me to nice dinners, made me feel special. Then last week, everything changed. He showed me what he really does, said I was already too involved to back out. Harris recorded everything. What exactly does Mr. Sellers do? He works for someone named Randy Monroe. They move... Maddie couldn't finish, choking on the words. They move people. Young women mostly, across state lines. Brett said the USB had client information they needed to relocate because the FBI was getting close. He told me to hide it somewhere no one would search. I thought Emma's jacket, God forgive me. I thought a child would be safe from suspicion. Thomas felt rage building in his chest but kept his voice level. Where is Sellers now? I don't know. He called 20 minutes ago, said things were about to get complicated, told me to pack and meet him at some warehouse. Then he hung up. Maddie gestured to the chaos. Someone came after he called. I heard them breaking in through the back. I hid in the pantry. They searched everywhere, took Brett's laptop from my bedroom, then left. They were looking for the USB, Thomas said, which means your boyfriend didn't tell his boss about his backup plan. Harris's phone buzzed. He stepped away, listened, then returned with a dark expression. We've got a problem. The encryption on that drive is high-grade military specification. My tech team estimates it'll take 48 hours minimum to crack, but they did recover metadata. The files were created using software registered to... He looked at Thomas. To your business, Mr. Chang, your company's licensed forensics program. The frame slammed shut like a trap. Thomas saw it clearly now, the elaborate setup, the false trail leading directly to him. Someone's accessed my systems. I need to check my office. Mr. Chang, you're not going anywhere until we verify your story. Then verify it. Pull my security logs, check my firewall activity. If someone used my software to create those files, there'll be traces. Thomas pulled out his phone, opening his company's remote monitoring app. The login history made his blood run cold. Someone accessed my main workstation yesterday at 2:47 p.m. I was in a client meeting across town. I can prove it. They were in my system for 37 minutes. Harris examined the phone. Can you tell what they accessed? Not remotely. I need to be at the office with my full security suite. Thomas met the agent's eyes. I spent 7 years in military intelligence analyzing terrorist networks and tracking data flows. I know how to backtrack an intrusion. Let me help you. Or you're very good at covering your tracks. If I were guilty, I'd have wiped these logs. I'd have an alibi prepared. I sure as hell wouldn't use my own daughter as a courier. Thomas's voice turned to steel. Agent Harris, someone broke into my digital life and is trying to destroy my real one. They've threatened my child and manipulated a vulnerable woman. I can sit here proving my innocence while they run, or I can help you catch them. Dina spoke up. He's telling the truth. Thomas might be a lot of things, but he'd never risk Emma. Never. Harris studied Thomas for a long moment, then made a decision. You'll work under supervision. One of my cyber specialists goes with you. You touch nothing without their approval. And Mr. Chang, if this is an act, if you're playing me, I will personally ensure you never see daylight again. Understood. They left Maddie in protective custody, her statement recorded, and her duplex now a crime scene. On the drive to Thomas's office, accompanied by a young FBI cyber specialist named Jordan Lyons, Thomas organized his thoughts. The attack was sophisticated, but not perfect. Whoever orchestrated this knew his routines, his business, his family situation. That meant surveillance, research, planning. But they'd made mistakes. Using Maddie was sloppy. She broke too easily. The military-grade encryption on the USB was overkill, drawing more attention than a simple password protection would have. And framing someone with Thomas's background in counterintelligence? That showed arrogance. His office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in the industrial district. Thomas had chosen it specifically for the security advantages, limited access points, excellent sightlines, isolated enough to notice surveillance. As they approached, he spotted something wrong immediately. Stop the car, he told Lyons. What is it? Window on the northeast corner, my main office. The blinds are closed. I always leave them open to monitor the parking lot. Thomas grabbed his phone, pulling up the interior security cameras. The feed was dead. Someone's inside. Lyons called for backup while Thomas studied the building. 2 exits, 1 main entrance, 1 fire escape. He designed his security system himself. Motion sensors, cameras, biometric locks. If someone had breached it, they were either very good or had inside information. We wait for backup, Lyons said. They could be destroying evidence right now. Or setting up an ambush. Thomas knew Lyons was right, but every second counted. Then his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Chang. The voice was smooth, educated, with a hint of amusement. I imagine you're outside your office right now, wondering if you should play hero. Let me save you the trouble. My people are already gone, but they left you a gift. Who is this? Someone who's very disappointed in Brett Sellers. The man had one job, dispose of evidence quietly. Instead, he created this whole mess, involving children and foolish old women. A sigh. Now I have to clean up his mistakes, which means cleaning up you. Randy Monroe, Thomas said, and heard the small pause that confirmed it. Smart. Though I suppose I should expect that from someone with your background. Tell me, Mr. Chang, did you really think you could consult for my competitors without consequences? Thomas's mind raced. I don't know what you're talking about. 6 months ago, you analyzed network patterns for a private security firm. They were investigating labor trafficking in the agricultural sector. Your report identified 3 supply chain vulnerabilities that cost my organization considerable revenue. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Wouldn't investigate who'd helped them? The Colorado case. Thomas had done the data work as a favor for Jonathan Kaplan, his old Army buddy who'd gone into private security. The firm never told him what they'd found or what came of his analysis. That job was legitimate consultation, Thomas said carefully, and this is legitimate business. You cost me money, Mr. Chang. In my world, that requires compensation. I was going to make it quick. Have Sellers plant evidence. Let the FBI destroy your reputation. Maybe arrange an unfortunate accident during your trial. But then I learned about Emma. Monroe's voice turned cold. Now I'm thinking of something more permanent, something that ensures you understand the cost of interfering with my interests. Thomas's free hand clenched into a fist. Touch my daughter and You'll what? You're about to be the FBI's primary suspect in a trafficking network. Your ex-wife will get full custody, and Emma will grow up visiting Daddy in prison, never knowing he was actually a hero who got too close to the truth. Monroe chuckled. Unless, of course, you're smarter than Sellers. Unless you can find a way out of this maze I've built for you. I do enjoy watching intelligent people struggle. The line went dead. Lyons stared at him. Was that Randy Monroe, the man running this whole operation? Thomas looked at his office building, then back at Lyons. And he's right. I've been consulting against his network without knowing it. This isn't just about the USB. It's revenge. The backup arrived, 3 FBI vehicles and Agent Harris. They swept the office building floor by floor. Thomas's office looked untouched at first glance, but his trained eye caught the subtle signs. A chair moved slightly from its usual position. A drawer not quite closed. His main computer still on when he always powered it down. And on his desk, arranged like a chess piece, sat a child's pink hair ribbon. Emma's ribbon, the one she'd been wearing when he dropped her off at school yesterday morning. The message was clear. We can reach her whenever we want. Harris photographed everything, while Lyons examined the computer. Mr. Chang, don't touch anything. But Thomas had already spotted what they'd left for him. Under the ribbon was a printed photograph, Emma leaving school holding Maddie's hand, taken yesterday, written across the bottom in red marker. Poor choices have consequences. They were in her classroom, Thomas said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. The rage he felt was too vast, too dangerous to let show. They photographed my daughter to prove they can get to her. Harris's expression hardened. This changes things. This is direct intimidation of a witness, an implicit threat against a minor. Monroe just made this very personal for the Bureau. Thomas met his eyes. Good. Because it's personal for me too. And I'm going to need your help to end this. What are you thinking? That Randy Monroe is used to intimidating people into submission. He threatened my daughter to make me back down, to make me run or collapse. Thomas picked up the ribbon with gloved hands, studied it like he'd studied enemy intelligence in Baghdad and Candle. But he made a mistake. He let me know this is bigger than just disposing of evidence. He told me I've already heard his operation once, which means I can hurt it again. You're talking about revenge. I'm talking about justice. Strategic, methodical, complete. Thomas turned to Harris. Monroe wants to watch me struggle in his maze? Fine. Let's show him what happens when the rat learns to hunt the exterminator. Harris considered this. You're proposing what exactly? I'm proposing we stop reacting and start acting. Monroe has spent months setting this up. He knows my routines, my weaknesses, my pressure points, but he doesn't know the most important thing. What's that? Thomas smiled without humor. That I spent 7 years doing exactly what he's doing now, finding patterns, exploiting vulnerabilities, dismantling networks from the inside out. The difference is I did it to people who were actually good at hiding. Monroe's arrogant. He just made himself visible to prove a point. And if he escalates, if he goes after Emma, then we make sure Emma's protected while I tear his organization apart piece by piece, starting with Brett Sellers. Thomas pulled up his company's advanced search algorithms. Sellers was surveillance on me for months, which means he left a digital footprint. Let me show you how we find him. Lyons whistled as Thomas's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up databases, cross-referencing data points, building a profile. Within 15 minutes, they had Brett Sellers' real identity. Brett Sullivan, 2 priors for fraud, known associate of Monroe's Eastern operations, current residence at a hotel downtown registered under a shell corporation. How did you do that so fast? Lyons asked. Because I'm very good at my job. And because Sellers is sloppy. Thomas pulled up traffic camera footage showing Sellers' car near Maddie's duplex on 7 different occasions. He thought he was being careful, but he didn't count on someone with access to integrated surveillance networks. He's at the Grandview Hotel, room 412. Want to bet he's packing right now? Harris was already on the phone, coordinating a team. We move in 30 minutes. Thomas saved everything to a secure drive, then turned to face Harris directly. I want in on this. I want to see his face when you arrest him. Civilians don't participate in FBI operations. I'm not asking as a civilian. I'm asking as someone who can identify Sellers on site, who can spot if he's destroying evidence, who can tell you exactly what questions to ask him about Monroe's network. Thomas leaned forward. And who has every legal right to confront the man who threatened his daughter? Harris weighed this, then nodded slowly. You stay in the van. You observe only. And if I tell you to back off, you back off immediately. Agreed. As they prepared to move on Sellers' location, Thomas felt the familiar rush of operational planning, the cold clarity that had served him in combat zones and intelligence operations. Monroe had tried to trap him in bureaucratic quicksand, to drown him in evidence and fear. But Thomas Chang hadn't survived 7 years in military intelligence by accepting other people's battlefields. If Monroe wanted a war, Thomas would give him one. Fought on Thomas's terms, with Thomas's rules, and with an ending Monroe would never see coming. The game had changed. The hunted was about to become the hunter. And Randy Monroe had no idea what he'd unleashed. The Grandview Hotel sat in the gentrified district where old industrial buildings had become trendy lofts and boutique accommodations. Thomas rode in the surveillance van with Lyons, watching through multiple camera feeds as Harris's team positioned themselves around the building. Target vehicle is still in the parking garage, one agent reported. Black Mercedes, plates matching our intel. Thomas studied the hotel's layout on the screen. Room 412 has a fire escape access. If Sellers has any training, he'll use it the moment he thinks you're coming through the front door. Harris, listening through comms, adjusted the plan. Team 2, cover the fire escape. Team 3, secure the garage. Nobody leaves this building. They moved at 9:47 p.m., a coordinated breach that Thomas recognized as textbook bureau tactics. The helmet cameras showed the approach. Hallway clear, agents stacked at the door. The sharp knock and announcement. FBI, open up! No response. They breached. The hotel room was a mess of packed bags, scattered documents, and the acrid smell of recent cigarette smoke. But no Brett Sellers. The bathroom window hung open, evening breeze stirring the curtains. He rabbited, Thomas said. Check the fire escape. The camera feed showed Team 2 on the fire escape, empty. Then movement in the parking garage feed. A figure in dark clothing sprinting between cars heading for the Mercedes. Garage, north exit, Harris barked. Thomas watched Sellers reach his car, fumble with keys. Team 3 emerged from cover, weapons drawn. For a moment, Thomas thought Sellers might try to run them over. But then the man's shoulders sagged and he raised his hands. The arrest was anticlimactic. Sellers offered no resistance, said nothing except to request a lawyer. They brought him to the FBI field office in handcuffs, his expression a mixture of fear and calculation. Thomas waited in an observation room as Harris and another agent conducted the interview. Mr. Sullivan, or do you prefer Sellers? We've got you on coercion, conspiracy, and accessory to human trafficking. Harris began. That's 25 to life before we even get to the federal charges. But you seem like a smart guy. Smart enough to know when you're out of moves. Sellers leaned back, trying for confidence. I want a deal. Tell us about Randy Monroe. I want a deal first. You're not in a position to negotiate. We have Matty Howard's statement. We have the USB. We have your digital footprint all over this operation. Harris slid a folder across the table. We also have traffic cam footage of you meeting with Monroe 3 days ago at the Riverside warehouse. You want to know what we found when we ran the plates on the other cars at that meeting? 7 known traffickers, 2 missing persons who turned up in medical examiner reports, and 1 accountant currently under investigation for money laundering. Sellers' face paled. So here's what's going to happen, Harris continued. You're going to tell us everything about Monroe's operation. Where he moves people, who he works with, how he launders money, where he keeps his records. You give us Monroe, we talk to the prosecutor about reducing your charges. You stay quiet. You go down with the ship. Monroe will kill me. Monroe will try, which is why you'll be in protective custody. Harris leaned forward. Or you can take your chances in general population at a federal facility, where I'm sure the other inmates will be very interested to hear what you've done. Thomas watched Sellers crack in real time. The man had bullied an old woman, threatened a child, But when faced with consequences for himself, he folded like paper. I need guarantees. Witness protection, new identity, relocated somewhere Monroe can't find me. Keep talking and we'll see what we can arrange. Sellers talked for 3 hours. He detailed Monroe's network, a sophisticated operation moving women through the Midwest, using legitimate businesses as fronts, laundering money through real estate and shell corporations. The USB contained client information, financial records, and locations of safe houses across 4 states. But what caught Thomas's attention was what Sellers said about the frame-up. Monroe learned about Chang's analysis work about 2 months ago. One of our guys in the agricultural sector got busted, traced it back to the security firm Chang consulted for. Monroe wanted revenge, but subtle. He had me research Chang, family, business, routines, everything. That's when I met Maddie at the community center. Monroe thought it was perfect. Get close to the family, plant evidence, frame Chang for our operation while we relocated it. 2 problems solved at once. Whose idea was it to use the child's jacket? Harris asked. Sellers had the decency to look ashamed. Mine. I thought it was clever. No one searches a kid. I didn't tell Monroe about it because I wanted to impress him with my initiative. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I got us all caught. Where is Monroe now? He has the estate outside the city, Barrington Road, the old Morrison property, but he won't be there. When this went sideways, he activated his evacuation protocol. He's probably already across state lines with new identification. Thomas's jaw clenched. Monroe was running, which meant he might get away. All this, Emma's fear, Maddie's manipulation, the attempt to destroy Thomas's life, and the man responsible might escape justice. Harris must have sensed his thoughts. We'll issue warrants, coordinate with other field offices. Monroe can run, but he can't hide forever. Yes, he can, Thomas said quietly. Men like Monroe have contingencies, multiple identities, offshore accounts, safe houses in countries without extradition. By the time your warrants process, he'll be in the wind. Harris turned to face him through the one-way glass. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that legal processes have a speed limit, and Monroe's already got a head start. 20 minutes later, Thomas sat across from Harris in a private office. You want to tell me what you're really thinking? Harris asked. Thomas chose his words carefully. You're FBI. You have rules, procedures, chains of command. Those are good things. They prevent abuse of power, ensure justice is served properly, but they also mean Monroe has time to escape. And you don't have those constraints. I have different constraints. I'm a private citizen with advanced technical skills and strong motivation. I also have contacts from my military days who operate in gray areas. Thomas pulled out his phone. There's someone I need to call. Jonathan Kaplan. He runs the security firm I consulted for. He's also got resources that might locate Monroe faster than official channels. Harris studied him. If you're planning some kind of vigilante operation, I'm planning to help you build a case, but I'm also not willing to let the man who threatened my daughter fly off to Monaco and live happily ever after. Thomas met his eyes. I'm not asking for permission, Agent Harris. I'm giving you professional courtesy. I'm going to find Randy Monroe. What happens after that? I'd prefer involved your badge and your handcuffs. But if it doesn't, I can live with that too. That's conspiracy to commit assault, at minimum. That's a father protecting his child and a citizen taking action when the system moves too slow. Harris was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, and I'm going to focus all my attention on processing Sellers and coordinating with other offices to locate Monroe, which will take significant time and resources. I understand. And if a private citizen happens to discover Monroe's whereabouts and reports it to the FBI, we would, of course, respond immediately. Thomas smiled grimly. Of course. But Mr. Chang, if you do something illegal, if you cross lines that can't be uncrossed, I will arrest you. Clear? Crystal. Thomas left the FBI office at midnight. His first call was to Jonathan Kaplan, who answered on the second ring despite the hour. Tommy Chang. Hell of a time for a social call. Not social. I need your help, John, and I need it off the books. This about that trafficking thing on the news? Saw your name mentioned? It's about the man who tried to frame me, threatened my daughter, and is currently trying to flee the country. Thomas explained the situation as he drove, leaving nothing out. Jonathan was quiet for a beat after Thomas finished. You know what you're asking, right? This isn't analysis work. This is direct action. I know, and I know it's not your usual job. But Monroe used my consulting work for you as an excuse to target my family. That makes this connected to both of us. Where's Emma now? With Dinah at a hotel, FBI protection detail outside. Good, keep her there. Thomas heard keyboard clicks in the background. I'm pulling up what we have on Monroe from the agricultural case. We identified him as a major player, but couldn't prove direct involvement. He's careful, insulated by layers of subordinates. Sellers gave the FBI his estate location, but he's probably already gone. Then we find where he went. Monroe's got money, but money leaves trails if you know where to look. More typing. I've got access to some, let's call them unconventional databases. Private flight manifests, luxury hotel bookings, satellite phone usage. Give me 2 hours. John, this could be dangerous. If Monroe realizes we're tracking him. Tommy, remember Kirkuk? When those insurgents had you pinned down and I came in with that crazy flanking maneuver? I remember. You said you'd owe me one. I'm calling it even after this. No arguments. Thomas felt something loosen in his chest, the relief of not being alone in this. Thank you. Thank me when we nail this bastard. And Tommy, we do this smart. We find him. We document everything. We gift wrap him for the FBI. We're not killers. Agreed. Thomas drove to his backup office, a small space he maintained under a different company name for sensitive projects. The location was unknown to anyone but Jonathan, purchased through careful layers of anonymity. If Monroe's people were watching his main office, they wouldn't find him here. He spent the next 2 hours building a profile of Randy Monroe, using every database he could access legally and a few he probably shouldn't. Military intelligence had taught him how to find people who didn't want to be found, and consulting had kept those skills sharp. Monroe was 47, third-generation wealth from manufacturing, educated at Princeton, no criminal record. On paper, he was a legitimate businessman with interests in real estate and agricultural exports. But beneath the surface, Thomas found the cracks. Shell corporations with interlocking ownership, properties in strategic locations along trafficking routes, business partners with suspicious backgrounds. The pattern was sophisticated but not invisible. Monroe had built his network over decades, probably inheriting some of it from his father. The trafficking operation was just one revenue stream, hidden among legitimate businesses like a tumor in healthy tissue. Jonathan called at 3 a.m. Got him. Monroe chartered a private jet 6 hours ago from a regional airport. Filed flight plan for Mexico City, but that's not where he's going. How do you know? Because the same shell company that owns the jet has a villa in Belize, and there's a helicopter booked to leave Mexico City for Belize at dawn. He's running to non-extradition country. Thomas felt cold fury settle over him. How long before he reaches Belize? Jet lands in 90 minutes. Helicopter flight is another hour and a half after that. Figure he's in his villa by sunrise local time. Can the FBI intercept in Mexico? Maybe, but it'll take coordination with Mexican authorities, which takes time. And once he's in Belize, it gets complicated. The villa is registered under a local corporation, technically Belizean property. Extradition would take months if it happens at all. Thomas thought rapidly, wargaming scenarios. What if someone were to enter Belize, locate Monroe, and document his activities there? Video evidence of him in a location that contradicts his legal claims? You're talking about international surveillance. That's way outside your jurisdiction. I'm talking about a private citizen traveling to Belize for personal reasons who happens to document evidence of a crime. Jonathan laughed darkly. You're insane, I love it. But Tommy, even if you get evidence, how does that help? He's still out of reach. Evidence builds a case. A case creates pressure. Pressure makes people desperate. Thomas pulled up maps of Belize. And desperate people make mistakes. Monroe thinks he's won. He thinks he's untouchable now. That overconfidence is exploitable. You'd need to move fast, really fast. I can be at the airport in 40 minutes. How fast can you book me a flight to Belize? You're serious about this? Monroe threatened Emma. He tried to destroy my life, and now he's going to sip drinks on a beach while the people he's hurt suffer? Thomas's voice was steel. I'm very serious. All right, give me 20 minutes. Pack light. You'll be going through customs, and you need to look like a tourist. Camera, phone, casual clothes, nothing that screams manhunt. Thomas was already moving. He kept go bags in the office for quick travel, a habit from military days. He swapped his current clothes for vacation casual, grabbed his good camera and laptop, and created a cover story. Photographer on a personal retreat. Researching locations for a book. Jonathan called back with flight details. You're booked on a 6 a.m. flight to Belize City, connecting through Houston. You'll land at 2 p.m. local time. I'm sending you coordinates for Monroe's villa. It's on a private island, accessible only by boat. I've also got you a reservation at a resort about 3 miles from the island. You're officially there for a photography vacation. What about surveillance equipment? Resort has a dive shop. Buy underwater camera equipment. It won't look suspicious. Use your phone for everything else. Modern smartphones are sophisticated enough for what you need. Thomas made one more call to Dina. I need you to keep Emma secure. Don't tell anyone where you are, not even your mother. I know that's hard, but Maddie's compromised. She might not mean to, but she could reveal information. Thomas, what are you doing? Following a lead. I'll be out of contact for about 24 hours. The FBI said you have to stay in the city. The FBI said I can't leave the country without permission. I'm not asking permission. He softened his voice. Dina, Monroe tried to use our daughter as a pawn. The FBI will do everything they can within legal limits. I'm going to do what's necessary beyond those limits. You could go to prison. I could, but Emma will be safe, and Monroe will pay for what he's done. That's worth it to me. Dina was crying. Just be careful. Emma needs her father. I'll come back, I promise. The flight to Houston was uneventful. Thomas spent it studying satellite images of Monroe's villa, memorizing approaches and escape routes. The connecting flight to Belize gave him time to refine his plan. He wasn't going to confront Monroe directly. That would be stupid and accomplish nothing. Instead, he'd document everything, gather evidence, and find the pressure point that would bring Monroe back to U.S. jurisdiction. Every criminal had one. Monroe's was likely financial, his wealth was his power, and wealth could be traced, frozen, seized. Belize City hit him with humid heat and the smell of ocean. Thomas passed through customs as a photographer, showing his cover story documents. The customs officer barely glanced at them, stamping his passport with board efficiency. The resort was exactly as advertised. White sand beaches, clear water, tourists in bright shirts. Thomas checked in, dumped his bags, and immediately headed to the dive shop. He rented an underwater camera, a telephoto lens, and a small drone for aerial beach photography. Then he hired a boat. The captain was a weathered local named Carlos, who asked no questions beyond the destination. The private island? Very exclusive. You know someone there? I'm hoping to get some architectural photos. Wealthy estates against tropical backgrounds. Carlos shrugged. We can circle at a distance. Get too close and security will chase us off. The man who owns that place, he values his privacy. They approached Monroe's Island as the sun began its descent, golden light perfect for photography. Through the telephoto lens, Thomas captured everything. The villa's layout, the security cameras, the boat dock, the 2 armed guards patrolling the perimeter. And there on the veranda, Randy Monroe himself. Relaxed in a chair, drink in hand, looking like a man without a care in the world. Thomas took 50 photos, documenting Monroe's presence, the date and time stamps proving he was in Belize while claiming to be in the United States. Then he launched the drone, capturing aerial footage that showed the whole island, the security setup, everything the FBI would need for a tactical assessment. Monroe looked up as the drone passed overhead, probably assuming it was just another tourist toy. He even waved, amused. Thomas smiled coldly behind his camera. Wave while you can, he thought. This isn't over. This is just beginning. He spent the evening in his resort room, uploading everything to encrypted servers and preparing a detailed dossier. But documentation alone wasn't enough. He needed leverage, something that would force Monroe out of hiding. That's when he noticed something in the drone footage. A boat arriving at the island's dock, two men unloading crates. Thomas enhanced the image, zoomed in on the crate markings. They were labeled as agricultural equipment, shipped from a company in Texas, a company Thomas recognized from Sellers' testimony, a front for Monroe's trafficking network. Monroe wasn't just hiding in Belize, he was still running his operation, coordinating shipments, managing the business, which meant he was communicating with people in the United States using phones or computers that could be tracked. Thomas called Jonathan. "I need you to do something that's probably illegal." "Is it Tuesday already?" "Monroe's still active. He's receiving shipments, which means he's communicating with his U.S. operations. If we can intercept those communications, we can trace the network and provide the FBI with active conspiracy evidence." "Smart." Jonathan paused. "But Tommy, intercepting communications without warrants is a federal crime. Only if we use it in court. What if we just use it to identify targets for the FBI to investigate legally?" "You're talking about parallel construction. We find evidence illegally, then point the FBI toward legal ways to discover the same information." "Exactly," Jonathan sighed. "You're going to get us both arrested." "All right, I'm in. Give me access to the communication frequencies around that island. I'll see what I can pick up." Thomas used his laptop's software-defined radio capabilities to scan for transmissions. Modern technology made sophisticated surveillance accessible to anyone with the right knowledge. Within an hour, he'd identified 3 encrypted communication channels originating from the island. Jonathan's hacking skills cracked 2 of them by midnight. The third, more sophisticated, took until 3 a.m. But once they were in, the intelligence was gold. Monroe wasn't just running, he was consolidating, preparing to rebuild his network from Belize with new partners, new routes, new victims. The communications detailed meetings with traffickers from Central America, plans to expand operations, discussions of political bribes to ensure protection, and most importantly, they revealed Monroe's weakness. His accountant, a man named Edgar Dudley, still in the United States, still managing the money that funded everything. Without Dudley, Monroe's finances would collapse. His offshore accounts, shell corporations, the whole pyramid would crumble without someone to maintain it. "We need to give this to the FBI," Thomas said, "but we can't reveal how we got it." "I've got an idea." Jonathan's voice carried a grim satisfaction. "What if Edgar Dudley decided to come forward as a whistleblower? What if he got spooked by Monroe fleeing and decided to save himself by cooperating? Can you make that happen? Leave it to me. I've got leverage on half the white-collar criminals in 3 states. Give me Dudley's information in 12 hours. Thomas sent everything they had on Dudley, then collapsed into bed for 3 hours of exhausted sleep. He woke to his phone buzzing, a text from Jonathan. "Dudley's talking to the FBI, brought his own lawyer and everything. He's giving them the whole financial network. Harris says it's the break they needed. You can come home." Thomas booked the next flight back, leaving Belize with the same casual tourist demeanor he'd arrived with. But inside, he felt the grim satisfaction of a mission accomplished. He'd found Monroe, documented his location, identified his weakness, and set in motion the cascade that would bring him down. The hunt was far from over, but the trap was springing shut, and Randy Monroe didn't even know it yet. Thomas landed back in the United States to find Agent Harris waiting at the airport, expression unreadable. For a moment, Thomas wondered if he'd been too clever, if the FBI had figured out the Belize trip and the communication intercepts. But Harris just handed him a coffee. "Welcome back, Mr. Chang. We need to talk." They sat in an airport cafe while Harris outlined the situation. "Edgar Dudley walked into our office yesterday with a lawyer and enough financial records to bury Monroe 10 times over. Bank accounts, shell corporations, property holdings, transaction records going back 15 years. He says Monroe called him from Belize, told him to liquidate assets and prepare to relocate the entire operation. Dudley got scared and decided to save himself." "Smart move," Thomas said carefully. "Very smart. Almost too smart. Like someone encouraged him to do it." Harris's eyes were sharp. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "I'm just glad he came forward." "Right. Well, thanks to Dudley's cooperation, We've frozen Monroe's U.S. assets, issued warrants for 24 of his associates, and coordinated with Belizean authorities for Monroe's arrest. They raided the villa this morning. Monroe's in custody, fighting extradition, but it's a losing battle. We've got him. Thomas felt the tension drain from his shoulders. What about Emma? Is she safe? With Monroe in custody and his network dismantled, yes. We'll maintain protection for a few more days to be sure. But the threat's over. Harris leaned forward. Now you want to tell me how you knew Monroe was in Belize when we hadn't confirmed that yet? Lucky guess based on Sellers' information about Monroe's evacuation protocol. And the timing of Dudley's cooperation right after you took a mysterious 24-hour trip. I went to visit my sister. She lives in Texas. You can check the flight records. Harris smiled slightly. I did. You flew to Houston, but there's a 6-hour gap in your whereabouts before you flew back. Long layover? I'm a nervous flyer. I stayed in the airport. In an airport with no security camera footage of you, no credit card transactions, nothing. Thomas met his eyes. Agent Harris, all that matters is Monroe's in custody, and the evidence is legal. Everything else is speculation. Harris studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. And officially, that's all I care about. Unofficially, he extended his hand. Good work, Mr. Chung. Whatever you did or didn't do, it got results. Thomas shook his hand. What happens now? Now we build the case. With Dudley's testimony and the evidence from the USB, Monroe's looking at multiple life sentences. Sellers is cooperating for a reduced sentence. The trafficking victims we've identified are getting help. And you get your life back. Just like that? Just like that. You're officially cleared of all suspicion. The investigation will confirm you were an intended victim of Monroe's vendetta, not a participant in his crimes. Harris stood. Go see your daughter, Mr. Chung. She's been asking for you. Thomas found Emma and Dina at the FBI-provided hotel, under the watch of 2 agents who nodded respectfully as he approached. Emma launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him over. Daddy, you're back! Did you catch the bad man? The FBI caught him, sweetheart. He's going to jail for a very long time. Dina hugged him too, relief evident in her eyes. Thank you for protecting her, for fixing this. Always. Thomas looked at both of them. I know this has been terrifying. I know Maddie's involvement makes it complicated, but we're going to get through it together. Emma's safe. That's what matters. Later that evening, after Emma had fallen asleep watching cartoons, Thomas and Dina talked about next steps. Mom's devastated, Dina said quietly. She's cooperating fully with the FBI, but she knows she'll face charges for her role. What's she looking at? Coercion charges, possibly probation if the prosecutor believes she was genuinely manipulated. Her lawyer thinks they can argue diminished capacity given Sellers' threats. Dina wiped her eyes. She betrayed us, endangered Emma. But she's also my mother, and she's broken. I know. Thomas wanted to hate Maddie, but he'd seen too much in his life to think in absolutes. People make terrible choices when they're scared. She'll have to face consequences, but maybe there's room for redemption too. You're more generous than I'd be. I'm just tired of anger. Monroe's caught. Emma's safe. That's enough. But 3 days later, Thomas learned it wasn't enough. Not quite. Agent Harris called with news. Monroe's fighting extradition harder than expected. He's got expensive lawyers arguing that the evidence against him was obtained improperly. They're claiming the USB was planted, that Dudley's testimony was coerced, that the whole case is tainted. Thomas felt cold fury return. Can they win? Probably not, but they can delay. Keep Monroe in Belize for months, maybe years, while courts sort through motions and appeals. And if he manages to bribe the right officials there, he might never come back. That's not acceptable. I agree. But legally, our hands are tied. We've done everything by the book. But Monroe's wealth gives him options most criminals don't have. Thomas thanked Harris and ended the call. Then he made another call, this one to Jonathan. Please tell me you're not planning something stupid, Jonathan said by way of greeting. Define stupid. Anything that involves you personally going after Monroe again, then I'm definitely not planning that. Thomas pulled up files on his computer. I'm planning something smart. Monroe's using his wealth to avoid justice. What if we take away his wealth? We already froze his U.S. assets. His U.S. assets. But he's got money hidden all over the world. Dudley gave us the domestic network, but international accounts are harder to trace. Unless someone with expertise in financial forensics decided to do some digging. You're talking about tracking hidden offshore accounts, shell corporations and tax havens, the whole 9 yards. That's specialized work. I know, which is why I'll need help. Thomas's fingers flew across the keyboard. But I've got contacts from my consulting days, people who owe me favors. Give me a week and I'll have Monroe's entire financial network mapped. Then we feed it to the FBI, let them work with international authorities to freeze everything. And without money, Monroe can't pay for his legal defense or bribe officials? Exactly. He becomes just another criminal facing justice, not a wealthy man buying his way out. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. This is risky. You'd be operating in legal gray areas again. I'm a private consultant conducting financial analysis. Nothing illegal about that. Unless you hack into secure systems to get the information. Who said anything about hacking? I'm just very good at finding publicly available information that most people don't know how to access. Thomas smiled. Come on, John. One more mission. Let's finish this right. You're going to give me a heart attack one of these days. All right, I'm in. Send me what you need. The next week was a blur of research, data analysis, and careful digital investigation. Thomas used every skill he'd developed over 15 years of intelligence and consulting work. He traced shell corporations through layers of obfuscation, identified hidden accounts by their transaction patterns, mapped financial flows across 3 continents. He didn't hack anything. He didn't need to. Monroe's organization was sophisticated but not invisible. The wealthy got lazy, assuming their money protected them from scrutiny. They made mistakes, left trails, documented transactions that connected the dots for anyone patient enough to look. Thomas was very patient. By the end of the week, he had a complete picture of Monroe's financial empire. Accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore, real estate holdings under dozens of different corporate names, investment portfolios managed through layers of trusts and intermediaries. Total value, approximately $340 million. Thomas packaged everything into a detailed report, complete with documentation, transaction records, and legal analysis. Then he sent it anonymously to Agent Harris, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and the IRS. Within 48 hours, the seizures began. And international authorities, acting on the FBI's evidence, froze accounts across multiple countries. Monroe's lawyers, who'd been paid for months in advance, suddenly found their retainers exhausted and no new money coming. His Belizean protection, purchased with regular bribes, evaporated when the bribes stopped. Thomas watched the news with grim satisfaction as Monroe was extradited to the United States, his legal team reduced to a single public defender, his empire in ruins. Agent Harris called. Someone sent us an extensive financial report on Monroe, anonymous submission, but incredibly detailed. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Sounds like someone who cares about justice. Someone with advanced financial forensic skills and access to international databases? I'm sure the FBI has those resources internally. Harris chuckled. Right. Well, whoever it was did us a huge favor. Monroe's broke, his network's destroyed, and he's facing trial with no resources to fight it. That anonymous someone basically guaranteed Monroe will spend the rest of his life in prison. Good, Thomas said simply. The trial took 3 months. Thomas attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Emma beside him, wanting her to see justice in action. She was young, but he wanted her to understand that bad people faced consequences, that the system worked when good people fought for it. Monroe looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, without his wealth and power to shield him. His public defender did her best, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sellers testified, Dudley testified, victims testified. The financial records spoke for themselves. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: human trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering, coercion, and a dozen other charges. The judge sentenced Monroe to 14 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. As they led Monroe away, he caught Thomas's eye. For a moment, recognition and hatred flashed across his face. Then he was gone, swallowed by the correction system, his name destined to be forgotten except as a cautionary tale. Outside the courthouse, Agent Harris approached Thomas. Closure? Getting there. Thomas looked at Emma, who was drawing pictures on a bench nearby. What about the other victims? The women Monroe trafficked? We've identified 37 so far, with more coming forward. They're getting medical care, counseling, legal help. Some want to testify in related trials. Others just want to rebuild their lives in private. We're supporting both choices. And Maddie pleaded guilty to conspiracy and coercion. Judge gave her 5 years, suspended to probation given her cooperation and the evidence of duress. She'll have to complete counseling and community service, but she won't see prison time. Thomas nodded. That's probably fair. She made terrible choices, but she was also a victim in her own way. You're more forgiving than I expected. I'm not forgiving, I'm just practical. Maddie will have to live with what she did. Earn back her family's trust, if that's even possible. That's punishment enough. Harris extended his hand. It's been interesting working with you, Mr. Chang. Frustrating at times, but interesting. If you ever want to consult officially for the Bureau, I'll stick to private sector work. Less oversight. Thomas shook his hand. But if you ever need someone to analyze a particularly tricky data problem, give me a call. 3 months later, Thomas stood in family court for a very different kind of hearing. Dina had agreed to modify their custody arrangement, giving Thomas primary custody of Emma with generous visitation rights. She needs stability, Dina explained to the judge, and Thomas has proven he'll do anything to protect her. I love my daughter, but right now, she's safer with him. The judge approved the arrangement. As they left the courthouse, Emma squeezed Thomas's hand. Daddy, does this mean I get to live with you all the time? Most of the time, sweetheart. You'll still see your mom lots, but you'll come home to me. Good, I like your house better. You make better pancakes. Thomas laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. They'd survived. More than that, they'd won. Monroe was in prison. Emma was safe. His reputation was cleared. The trafficking network was dismantled. But Thomas knew better than to think it was completely over. Monroe had partners, associates, people who might seek revenge. So Thomas took precautions. He upgraded his security systems, maintained connections with Harris and Jonathan, stayed vigilant. And he taught Emma to be cautious without being fearful, aware without being paranoid. She took self-defense classes, learned to trust her instincts, understood that the world had dangers, but also had people who would fight to protect the innocent. On the anniversary of the FBI's raid at Emma's school, Thomas took her to a park. They sat on a bench watching other kids play, eating ice cream in comfortable silence. Daddy, Emma said suddenly, are you ever scared? Sometimes being scared is normal, but you stop the bad man anyway, because some things are more important than being scared, like keeping you safe. Emma thought about this, then hugged him fiercely. I'm glad you're my daddy. Thomas held her close, feeling the weight of the past year, the fear, the anger, the desperate fight to protect his child, but also feeling something else, pride in having stood up to evil, satisfaction in having won, and hope for the future. Randy Monroe had tried to destroy him, had threatened the most precious thing in Thomas's world, and Thomas had done more than survive. He'd fought back with every skill he possessed, every resource he could muster, every bit of determination in his soul. He'd torn apart Monroe's empire, bankrupt his finances, and ensured justice was served. And he'd done it while staying true to himself, protecting the innocent, and building a case that would keep Monroe locked away forever. The hunt was over. The war was won. And Thomas Chang could finally rest. But he'd never forget the lessons learned, that evil exists in sophisticated forms, that justice sometimes requires unconventional methods, and that a father's love for his child was the most powerful force in the world. As Emma ran off to play on the swings, Thomas pulled out his phone and sent one final message to Jonathan. Mission accomplished. Thanks for having my back. The response came immediately. Always, brother. Always. Thomas pocketed his phone and watched his daughter play, a smile on his face and peace in his heart. The nightmare was over. Life could finally begin again. And if another Randy Monroe ever threatened his family, well, Thomas knew exactly what to do. He'd proven he could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast anyone who dared threaten the people he loved. That knowledge, more than any security system or FBI contact, was what let him truly relax for the first time in months. The bad guys had lost. The good guys had won. And justice, hard-fought and dearly won, had prevailed. In the end, that was all that mattered.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.